This is Susie Talks a Lot, reporting to you live from Betty's Bakery Barn, where it appears the evil villain Gluten has struck again. Details are still coming in about the incident, so while we continue to gather the data, I'll send you back to Dan in our studio.
Yes. Let's check in with Julie, our field reporter, and see if she can shed some light on this Gluten character.
Thanks, Dan. I'm here with Professor Know-It-All, an expert in food science, and this gnarly dude.
Yo, what's up? Cookies rule. Woohoo!
Okay, Professor Know-It-All, what can you tell me about gluten?
Thank you, Julie. I'd be happy to explain gluten. Gluten is derived directly from the Latin word gluten, meaning glue. It is a protein composite found in wheat. Gluten is a composite of a gliadin and a glutenin, which is conjoined with starch in the endosperm of various grass-related grains.
Okay, apparently the good professor is choosing to give us an answer in another language today. Gnarly dude, what's your take on gluten?
Well, Julie, much like the stretchy waistband in your gym shorts, gluten is elastic. It helps dough rise, keep its shape, and often gives the final product a chewy texture.
Excellent. Thank you for speaking in English, gnarly dude. Well, I think our viewers would agree with me when I say flowers, flowers. Is that correct, Professor?
Not at all, Julie. Around 6000 BC, people discovered that wheat seeds crushed between millstones created flour. The Romans used cone mills to grind their wheat, and later in London, during the industrial era, a steam mill was used to grain wheat. Because of the fatty acids in the germ, it was difficult to preserve the flour during the Industrial Revolution. Therefore, the germ was separated from the endosperm and bran. It was then heat processed with steam or dry heat and finally blended back into the flour. Julie?
Oh, yes. I'm sorry. Kind of dozed off there. Gnarly dude, you love cookies. Can you tell a difference in cookies baked with different flours?
Totally, dude. Here, let me show you. Let's mix some water into these flours and see the results. Can you see the strands of gluten that are forming? The glutinous flour has a high protein content. It will be best for baking breads and will give them a chewy texture. Let's compare the bread flour to this all-purpose flour. It still has protein and gluten. You can still see the strands of gluten that are forming. But it's a softer flour and it will bake great cookies. Cake flour is a lower protein flour. As you can see, the gluten strands are less pronounced in this flour. Cake flour is very soft and best for baking light, fluffy cakes. Rice flour has no gluten. As you can see, there are no strands of gluten that are forming. The flour-water mixture just sort of runs off the spoon. In order to bake cookies with this flour, you would have to add xanthan gum to help mock the stickiness of gluten, or choose a specifically formulated recipe.
Thank you.
What? Are you kidding me?
Well, the proof is in the pudding, as they say.
Oh, sorry, I don't know anything about your pudding. Just cookies.
Ugh. Is an expression, you numbskull?
Anyway, let's have a taste test, shall we?
Yes, let's. I baked a chocolate chip cookie recipe where I substituted rice flour for a regular all-purpose flour.
Dude, those cookies look terrible.
They're supposed to look awful. I'm proving a point. You can't simply substitute rice flour for all-purpose flour in a cookie recipe. There's no gluten in rice flour.
Here, Professor, try one of mine.
They're delicious.
I know, right? It's all thanks to my man AP.
AP?
Yeah, AP, all-purpose flour. All-purpose flour has just the right amount of protein to make a soft, delicious cookie.
I also baked this example.
Righteous, dude. I knew you could do it, Professor. What's your secret to these little vessels of heaven?
Those cookies are made with cake flour using the scoop and level method. Well-sifted flour usually produces 125 grams per cup. However, most American recipes are written with 140 grams of flour per cup, so weighing and experimentation can be helpful in baking unfamiliar recipes.
Huh?
Dude, he means like cookies baked with cake flour will rise higher and have a more cake-like texture due to the low protein in the flour.
I can't take this any longer. I've studied flour and its properties for years. I am the expert. Why? You're nothing but a bakery buff.
Did somebody say buff?
Is that Super Protein Man?
Is that you?
Why, yes, it is. I've just come from Betty's bakery barn where I sent the evil villain Gluten back to his village, Glutenus Maximus. He has no business in a gluten-free baking town where they make delicious French macaroons out of almond flour.
I can't believe this is happening.
I know. A baking factory where xanthan gum is added to gluten-free flour to mimic the stickiness of gluten must be protected. Gluten-free baking allows people with celiac disease and other gluten sensitivities to enjoy baked goods, and I am here to keep glutens in its place.
It's been quite a day here in Bakersfield. Back to you, Dan.
Susie, let's check in with Susie once again.
I must say, you're my favorite nutrient. You really know how to build muscles.
Susie!
Oh yes, new details. It turns out gluten isn't really evil after all. He just doesn't agree with all people. So to recap, all flour made from wheat has gluten. Those flours made from other resources like rice, almond, require special attention to achieve a more standard cookie texture. The protein in flour varies as well. It is highest in bread flours, lowest in cake flours. Needless to say, it's been a very busy day here in Bakersfield. I say we all pour ourselves a tall glass of milk and toss back a few cookies as we reflect on what we've learned today. This is Susie Talks A Lot reporting for you from CHIP. Good night, Bakersfield.